Welcome to Shared Parenting Coaching on Tuesdays. Our coach tonight is Colleen O'Neil. Colleen holds master's degrees in social work and in education. She's a trained divorce mediator, coach, therapist, and educator. Colleen's practice, mediation and beyond, in Westport, Connecticut, serves families in all phases of divorce and after divorce. Colleen, take it away.
Thank you, John. So happy for everybody that's either written in with your questions tonight. It is election night. I am sure we are all happy that that has finally landed, and hopefully most of you, many of you have voted and participated in the process. And so Shared Parenting Council coaching, really these Zoom nights every Tuesday from 8 to 8:30 are for people to write in and or even come on, but tonight's a little off night, but to write in or come on and just ask your questions around divorce, relationships, parenting, co-parenting, parallel parenting, where you are in the stage of divorce for yourself, parental alienation cases. So whatever you want to ask, please feel free to either write in ahead of time or come on while we're on live like we are now, John. Um, Please make note that this is not legal advice, mental health advice, financial advice. It is really just taking our personal and professional experience and then just relaying that information to you. So, John, thanks so much for showing up on election night. I know so many people are having election parties or home with their kids, just kind of like watching the process unfold. So, thanks so much for tonight for the opportunity.
Right. Good to be with you, Colleen. And yeah, election anxiety is another thing that a number of people are feeling. And it's unfortunate that we're as divided as we seem to be as a country.
Yeah.
But you know, the wonderful thing about this, Colleen, is that the participation rate is so high. So, and that's so important, as you and I know, if you know, to safeguard our liberties and our rights, we need to be actively involved. So it's wonderful to see that. That's really
It
bright.
is. And no matter what, no matter how it ends, it's nice to see people standing up for themselves and putting your vote in to say, this is what I think. And I think that's really that matters more than anything.
That's so true. And you know, in terms of shared parenting, family court reform, which I would like to see some court reform. That's the Shared Parenting Council of Connecticut is all about trying to change the court process around
Right.
divorce and child custody. Um, and um, you know, it happens in strange ways. I've been doing this for over 20 years now, and there has been reform and there has been change along the lines that I have advocated over these years. We're far from where I'd like to see us. But you know, the involvement of people this year, this election cycle, I think it's a good signal for what might happen with court reform. So I would like to start with criminal court, where there is more talk among politicians about criminal court reform than there is right now about family court reform, at least in Connecticut, that's true. Although we have a number of states which are reforming the family court system. So there is a movement, there's a shared parenting movement, which is having successes across the country. And again, we've had some success in Connecticut, but it's far from over.
Right.
So criminal court reform. I'm sure you've seen things in the news about trying to reform the bail system, which is highly unfair to low-income people who have,
Yeah.
if they can't afford to make bail, they have to sit in jail. And in these days of COVID, it's another big thing that makes this even more dramatic, right, Colleen? We have COVID and this highly contested election. Ah,
You can't throw anything, you have COVID, you have an election, you have Black Lives Matter, like you have and then women exiting the workforce because of COVID. Like you couldn't have more in this election if you tried.
right. Yes, it's pretty amazing, but it has brought out great participation. So that's the silver lining. Um, so yeah, there's been talk about reforming the bail system. There's been talk about reforming the voting system for felonies, and for any crime where people have served their, you know,
Right.
served their time and paid their dues to society. Shouldn't they be able to vote? And so that's highly relevant to what's happening tonight. And and I guess it's happening some places. In some places, it's restricted, as I understand it, by well, you can vote if you're a felon who's completed your sentence, but oh, you have to pay all of your fines and all of these accrued, you know, um, monetary factors, which is very hard for a convicted felon to do. So,
Well, if you've been in prison, there is no income.
right.
So unless you're, unless you're doing something illegal to have the income to pay for your legal exit. So
Right.
it's a really messed up system.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because to me, that's the link. That is the link is the monetary connection between criminal court and divorce court, family court. There's a
Oh,
big,
I
there's a big
thank you.
link.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you even saying that, because
Yeah,
most people would be like, well, divorce is divorce. And if you want to argue over something, you can argue. No, you can't.
yeah,
No, you can't.
yeah,
People with money have high conflict divorces. People who have no money can't argue.
right,
The system is set up for people who have money versus people who don't. I can't. So if you're making $50,000, $60,000 a year, you can't afford a guardian ad litem
right,
and your attorney and the other mental health professionals that might be brought in and the time off from work to go to court. You can't afford it.
right.
How, on the other hand, if you're making $200,000, $300,000 a year and then you have your bonuses, you have all the time in the world to argue about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And by the way, one of the big expenses you didn't mention is the maintaining of two different households. Often the households have split, and so there's just huge financial burdens. To me, the link between that and criminal court is again at the low income levels, is so the disadvantage of the people who aren't making a lot of income is enormous in family court and also in criminal court.
So can I just speak to this for a second, John?
Sure.
Because in low incomes, they're deadbeat dads.
Uh-oh.
In higher income, they're fighting for their children. And for me, I think most people would not be a deadbeat dad if they had the money to be in the system. So you never say to a guy who's making $150,000, $200,000 a year plus your bonus that you're a deadbeat dad. You're not a deadbeat dad. The deadbeat dad is because that person doesn't have the money to work the system.
Exactly. And by the way, I have to say that I strongly object to the word deadbeat dad. It's a deadbeat obligor, the person who's obligated to pay child support. And I think there is data on it that 10 to 20% of the people who are in trouble with paying child support are also women.
Yes.
It's not uncommon for a woman to end up losing custody and ending up trying to pay child support. I mean, it's not the majority of cases by a long shot, but it does happen. So I hope we can leave the phrase deadbeat dad behind us. But that's just my particularly male point of view, Colleen.
No, I listen, John, I would agree with that, but I think for kind of sharing information that you want to get out there for people to make a connection and understanding, we need to get rid of some of these terms, but these terms are still out there.
Right.
And so that people can still relate to these terms, it doesn't mean they're actually accurate.
Correct. That's right. So, for anyone who just joined us, Yet we're talking about the election night and the participation and how this might lead towards reform of family court and criminal court systems, both of which, in my opinion, need substantial change. So yeah, I think the strongest link is to the low income level, because as you pointed out, Colleen, the standard for putting someone in jail for non-payment of child support is willful non-payment. Okay,
Yeah.
so if you have the means to pay and you don't pay. And that does happen occasionally at the high income level, and there have been a very few cases where the person not paying is actually going to jail. But mostly it's going to hit the low income families, the low income obligor, the low income payer of child support. And why is that exactly? I think it's because there really just isn't enough income there. I spent a great deal of time researching child support guidelines.
Right.
They were revised just a few years ago in the state of Connecticut. And they're just extremely onerous for low-income obligors. And you can make a case for why that is. I guess the state doesn't want to end up paying for the children that somebody else fathered, somebody else conceived. But there just isn't enough income to go around to support two households and in any kind of good style. And so that ends up with the obligors, falling behind. There's just a huge scandal, in my opinion. It's just scandalous. The amount of arrearages on child support, they're just astronomical. And it's almost all these low-income obligors who haven't been able to pay. They get behind. It accumulates with penalties and so forth, and it becomes just an impossible situation. And that can lead to criminal behavior. That's the big link to me, because really the low-income obligors can be forced into the underground economy. And it's not just me. The Federal Commissioner of Child Support and child support collection at the federal level, which really means Native Americans and other U.S. lands, also has shared that opinion. I can trot out a bunch of evidence for that. So I think there is a link, and I'm hopeful that with all the participation in tonight's election, it can kind of be moved towards the forefront of we need court reform, both criminal and family court.
Well, I'm always going to be a big proponent, John, and I thank you for your ideas and your thoughts, but I'm a big proponent of that court and family don't even go together. And I've said that before. I don't think most of our problems with families belong in a court setting. They don't have the skills, they don't have the resources, and they don't have the expertise that so many other people have to be able to deal with a mother, a father. I didn't say you're married or not, but a mother and a father and a child. So that doesn't necessarily mean that the first step should be in a court setting. Because once you do that, you've set up this antagonistic venue for people. And I don't think that that's necessarily a good place for people to start. So I would much rather see people starting with mediators to help them establish where they are financially and emotionally.
Right.
And I don't necessarily believe, personally and professionally, that attorneys are the way to go, because attorneys don't have that ability to deal with, because when you come to court for a divorce or parenting, it's an emotional time. It's not this black and white cookie cutter contract that you're dealing with. There's a lot of emotion in that. And I don't think that attorneys and or judges are qualified to even work with families because they don't have the background. They don't have the background in psychology. They don't have the background in social work. They don't have the background in a collaborative process, if you will. And so a lot of what attorneys and judges do is bring that litigious background to what they deal with, and which is understandable because you can have a judge who deals with divorce, business, juvenile, like it's all over the place. They're dealing with everything. But I think family court needs very specific judges. I think they need specific family court personnel to deal with these cases because it's really far more emotional than it ever is judicial.
Right, and to start with the litigious, that's sort of the immediate thing. If you're considering a child custody case, file a court case. And at the Shared Parenting Council, the most common question I get is, can you help me find a lawyer?
Yes, right.
And as you point out, once you get into that and you hire a lawyer, then, their job really is to win for their client. It's really not about the children anymore.
No.
Which is really sad for the children.
Which is where I really believe that you need somebody with training, a mental health background training, to be able to fully assess both the mother and the father and help the attorneys work this forward. Because if you have a collaborative divorce, they have an attorney and then a plaintiff, and they have an attorney and then a defendant, and they bring in typically a professional mental health counselor to help navigate the process. And I think every divorce should have the opportunity, either if you want to bring in an attorney and do a collaborative divorce, that's great. But if you don't, I think that you should at the very least have a trained professional to help you draft parenting plans, financial plans, where we are in the process and how to move forward. But I think even if you don't bring in an attorney because you don't have the money for it, you should at the very least have someone to coach you in mediating this agreement, because there's a lot of people who would still, and I think it's almost like 78% go pro se. Many people want to handle their divorce by themselves. Partly it is because they don't have the money for attorneys, right? So if you're at the economic lower end, that you should be able to come into the courthouse with people who are trained mediators to help you navigate the issues that you seem to be having. And if you're that couple that wants to either do a collaborative divorce, or if you're that couple that wants to bring in your, you want your own attorney, but you don't want to do collaborative. You don't want to sit down and have the four of you and a mental health worker, but that you could still work it out. By all means, go ahead and do that. But I think most people would really benefit from trained mediators.
Certainly appreciate you sharing your years of experience and training on this issue, because it's so important. Our shared parenting legislation that we have prepared and would like to see move forward in the legislature in Connecticut does say that if the parents cannot agree on a parenting plan and on the custody of their child or children, that the divorce can order mediation. And that's the change from the current situation where, again, it's presumed that the lawyers and the judge can take care of it without the mediation.
I'd like to see at some point some arbitration come in where someone can just make a final decision for people or and then not use the courts as a battleground.
Right. Binding
So,
arbitration.
and it might move people. So if someone came to me and I said, well, I'm the final decision maker, someone that couple might decide, well, whoa, we don't want Colleen to make the final decision.
Uh-huh.
Let us come to a decision ourselves.
Right.
But when you can drag out in court for 2 to 5, 6, 10 years down the road, that's a disgrace to our justice system.
Really. Yeah. Well, and so if someone were here from the court system, they would say, well, we have the family counselors. What do they call it, Colleen? They
have families. You can go to family court. I mean, when you go to family court, you go to the family services department,
right.
And they're not trained in mediation. Let me say that.
Okay.
One of my big probably beefs, they're not trained.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. And yet they might say they are.
They try to help you work it out, but one, they're not mental health workers. Yeah. And they're not trained mediators. So I don't know how they help couples. Yeah. And then they take whatever that happened in that meeting or many meetings, and then they present it, they do a write-up to the court. But if you don't have the training, it makes me skeptical. Mm-hmm. Just like a guardian ad litem. A guardian ad litem could be an attorney, or it doesn't have to be an attorney. I don't think attorneys should be guardian ad litems. And John, I said this many, many times because they don't have the training, the mental health training that goes into what it really means to be a guardian ad litem. Right. When you're an attorney for a child in a divorce case, as opposed to a different kind of case, as opposed to like a civil case. If you're an attorney for a child representing that child's best interest in a really high conflict divorce where there's a lot of problems, you need to be more than an attorney. You need to really notice when a parent is histrionic, or when a parent is this or a parent is that, like if a parent's narcissist, or like you need to have that training to bring into, so when you're assessing a case, you really can see it not only from a legal perspective, but from a mental health perspective.
Right. Very, very interesting observation. Well, it's a big night, election night. I certainly appreciate your time. I think maybe we should wrap it up. I don't know, anything else to say?
Well, all I would say is that when you're making decisions, and I know it's a little late now, but going forward, when you're making decisions about who you vote for, you need to make sure that you have ample information, that you're making that decision based on that, what that person stands for. Never mind the party, really, it doesn't matter the party, and how it will affect your future or the future of your friends or loved ones going forward. And so obviously it's 8:30 now, John, on election night. People have cast their ballot, but when you cast a ballot, it has a ripple effect. And I think people have to understand that, just like when you do your divorce, it has a ripple effect, and you have to really understand that. And so all our choices and all our decisions that we make, it is, as you have to give thought and context around that ripple effect. Well,
and let's hope that with all the enthusiasm and all the participation in this election, that the ripples are in the direction of.
And let me just say, if you're not unhappy with the outcome, it is the outcome, and support the process.
Exactly. Very good point.
Just like divorce. You don't like the outcome, support the process. Doesn't mean you can't keep working for change.
That's right. And that's what we're doing at the Shared Parenting Council.
Absolutely. We're right. We're trying to create change and with respecting the process.
Right.
So I'll look forward to seeing you Tuesday,
Okay.
next Tuesday, John.
Next Tuesday on Zoom at 8 p.m.
Yes, we are.
Great. Yeah. Don't stay up too late watching your
You-
returns.
You neither. I'll look forward to connecting with you.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you,
Colleen.
John. Take care.
Bye. You too.
Bye-bye.